Profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta before teaching. Today we will continue to study the Mahayana Shurangama Sutra. In the previous sections of the Shurangama Sutra we have discussed many topics, such as the 18 realms and the 7 elements. We have spent quite a long time analyzing them. Everyone should be very clear about them. However, during the process of analysis, it might have been quite difficult for us. Next, regarding these sense objects, sense organs or consciousnesses, as well as the 4 or 5 elements, what are they really like? Actually, by relying on these, some sages were able to attain enlightenment. Therefore, the Buddha goes on to share some true cases, detailing how they achieved enlightenment in the past. Stories of enlightenment like these are rarely seen in many other sutras. For us later learners, if we truly want to practice, we can actually be just like the Buddha's 25 great disciples back then. Some of them attained enlightenment by relying on the sense organs. In fact, these principles, if we look at them from the perspective of tantric teachings, are quite similar. As everyone knows, last year and this year in our study of the 9 Tikyabji, there are many direct pointing out instructions on form, sound, smell, taste, and touch. Through these pointing out instructions, if we are of sharp faculties or have the right karmic connection, we can also fully realize the truth. So next we will discuss these 25 methods. Among the 25, it first talks about the 6 sense objects, then the 5 sense organs, the 6 consciousnesses, and the 7 elements. The ear organ is placed at the very end, because among the faculties for perfect penetration, it is relatively more important, and it is also explained in detail. Originally, just as we discussed yesterday, it is actually the 18 realms plus the 7 elements. These are cases of attaining enlightenment by relying on these phenomena. However, the ear organ is a bit different. Among the 6 sense organs, keeping the ear organ for a detailed explanation later has its specific reason. Now, looking at these 25 disciples, some are arhats and some are bodhisattvas. But many great masters of the past, when they analyzed this, pointed out that when the Buddha taught the Shurangama Sutra, it was meant to be the ultimate one vehicle. The ultimate one vehicle had already been established. So although on the surface it seems there are many arhats here, in reality they have all realized the selflessness of persons and the selflessness of phenomena. It is just that their identities appear different. Some of them in our Buddhist context manifest as arhats, but are actually Mahayana arhats. Such cases exist. There are also some commentaries that say the realization of these arhats is not perfect and not of definitive meaning, while the realization of the bodhisattvas is perfect and of definitive meaning. However, some great masters believe that actually what is taught here is all of definitive meaning and is all the most ultimate, because when we look at the states of these arhats, they all speak of perfection, they all speak of the essence of the Tathagata Garbha, which is perfect and definitive. They all describe such states of realization. Therefore, we do not need to worry thinking, oh, he is a Hinayana arhat, so perhaps his realization is a bit lower. Maybe it was like that when he first attained enlightenment, but ultimately when his realization was verified before the Buddha, his state must have been exceedingly high. We should understand it in this way. Today we will first discuss the 6 sense objects. Among the 6 objects we start with sound. Because the corresponding faculty for sound is the ear organ, and the ear organ has been moved to the end, sound seems a bit lonely and comes first. The object of sound, perfect penetration through sound. Let's first look at the very first of the 25 disciples. The first Ajinata Kauṇḍinya and the other 4 monks then stood up, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and said respectfully to the Buddha, "When we were in the deer park and the pheasant garden, we saw the Thus Come One soon after he had become a Buddha, and upon hearing his voice, we understood the 4 noble truths." Here among the 5 monks there is one named Kauṇḍinya. He can be called Kauṇḍinya or Ajinata Kauṇḍinya. Actually, everyone knows that when the Buddha was undergoing ascetic practices, Kauṇḍinya and the others, he was actually the head of the 5 monks. Kauṇḍinya was the leader of the 5 monks. Kauṇḍinya was also a relative of the Buddha on his mother's side. Among them 3 were relatives from his father's side, and 2 were from his mother's side. When the Buddha was practicing asceticism, they also came, but later, because they felt the lifestyle was too harsh and couldn't bear to continue, they went straight to the deer park. They did not achieve realization by the Nairanjana river. After the Buddha attained enlightenment, when he went to the deer park, they came over again. Then, when the Buddha first turned the wheel of Dharma, they also attained enlightenment. That is how the process went. So Kauṇḍinya is actually the first one among them here. Therefore, when we generally speak of the 5 monks, we often say the monk Kauṇḍinya. So Kauṇḍinya stood up from his seat, bowed down at the Buddha's feet, and addressed or reported to the Buddha, saying, "When I was in the deer park and the pheasant garden, I saw the Thus Come One initially attain enlightenment." Because he was fortunate at the time, he had the very first opportunity to witness Shakyamuni Buddha attaining enlightenment and turning the Dharma wheel on the spot. At this time, through the Buddha's wondrous voice, his beautiful voice, he realized the truth of the 4 noble truths: suffering, its origin, cessation, and the path. This is how he attained enlightenment. He spoke about this because it was through sound. By hearing the Buddha's voice, he was awakened here through the object of sound. Looking at our history, many great masters also attained awakening while their gurus were teaching the Dharma. They began to realize the path themselves. Through the object of sound, they attained enlightenment. So what is mentioned here? I was in the deer park and the pheasant garden. The deer park, as we know, was where there were many sages practicing in the past. There were also deer and many wild animals. It was somewhat like our modern-day zoos. There were also birds and pheasants. Various birds lived there as well. So why does he mention 2 places here? Actually, in the Tibetan text too, these 2 places frequently appear. So here, did Kauṇḍinya attain enlightenment in the deer park, or in the pheasant garden? In fact, the pheasant garden is a part of the deer park. Just like in a garden, there might be an area for birds over here, and an area for beasts over there. It's like that. As for the pheasant garden, some historical accounts say that when Shakyamuni Buddha was once a pheasant, he saw the forest catch on fire. Having no other choice, he used his own wings. He flew to the banks of the Ganges River, soaked his wings with water, and flew back to try and beat out the fire. After doing this for a very long time, the gods were moved and sent down rain, which extinguished the fire. At that time it seems this pheasant passed away, showing impermanence right there. Actually, this was when the Buddha was on the causal stage, manifesting as a pheasant to liberate and rescue sentient beings. It was such an experience. Because of this event, the place was later named the Pheasant Garden. So why does Kauṇḍinya mention 2 places? When some great masters explain this, they say it's because the 5 monks were in the deer park and listened when the Buddha first turned the Dharma wheel. However, as they listened, due to their different capacities, some attained enlightenment right then and there in the deer park. Others did not awaken instantly. They might have been in the nearby pheasant garden or other surrounding areas and attained enlightenment as they continued to practice. Therefore, regarding his enlightenment, on one hand, he received teachings in the deer park, and then in different places, including the pheasant garden, he attained such realizations. These stories, especially about the pheasant garden and how the Buddha on the causal path in the past extinguished the fire, are recorded in an extensive biography of the lives of Buddha Shakyamuni. I remember it being there. So his point, as mentioned just now, is that he saw the world-honored one turning the Dharma wheel, and he went to listen in person. While listening, the Buddha's wondrous voice, the object of sound, allowed him to awaken. What he realized was the truth of the Four Noble Truths. And at that time, when Shakyamuni Buddha asked the monks, "How are you all doing? Have you attained enlightenment?" At that time, Kauṇḍinya said, "The Buddha questioned us monks, and I was the first to truly understand. The thus come one verified my understanding, and gave me the name Ajinata. Then, when the Buddha asked at that time, I was initially known as the very first person in the world to attain enlightenment. So he claimed understanding. He had understood and awakened. He was already enlightened. At that time when the Buddha asked, 'Have you attained enlightenment?' Kauṇḍinya was the first. Maybe he was bolder, or perhaps as the Buddha's relative, he just answered truthfully, directly declaring, 'I have attained enlightenment.' Later, the Buddha also validated him and gave him the name Ajinata. Ajinata in Tibetan means omniscient or fully knowing. It carries this meaning because he was the very first to know the truth of the Four Noble Truths. The wondrousness of sound which had been hidden was everywhere revealed to me. So it was that I became an arhat by contemplating sound. Therefore, by relying on the Buddha's subtle and wondrous voice, he attained this hidden, Tathagata Garbha-like original truth, fully and perfectly realizing it. Actually, this perfect wondrous sound, later there will probably be perfect wondrous form, perfect wondrous fragrance, the wondrous fragrance secretly perfect. It will be like this for all of them, because form, sound, smell, taste, and touch are different. So here, due to the Buddha's extremely subtle and wondrous voice, he fully realized this state. In other words, the true nature of this beautiful sound is actually hidden, luminous, and it is the Tathagata Garbha perfect, completely penetrating and pervading the Dharma Dhatu. Such is its Dharma nature. For this reason, I relied on the Buddha's wondrous voice, the object of sound, to attain the fruit of arhatship. The Buddha has asked us how we broke through to enlightenment. I believe that the contemplation of sound is the best method. This time the Buddha asked every disciple about perfect penetration. As for perfect penetration, in Tibetan it is translated as the cause of Bodhi, meaning, if the Buddha asks me what the cause of Bodhi is, well, for me, I am not so clear about other things, but as far as I am concerned, I feel it is the object of sound. Among the 6 sense objects, sound is the best. For me, the other 5 objects are not important, and the 6 sense organs might not be important either. For me, it is indeed by relying on this object, relying on the object of sound, that I attained enlightenment. So his own level of realization is like this. This is the first disciple speaking of his realization. Now, let's move on to the second. The second is the object of form. As for form, here it mentions Upaniṣad. If we translate it into Chinese, it means near and few, near as in very close, and few as in very little. After he practiced, his afflictions came nearer to the end, becoming fewer and fewer. It is also translated as the emptiness of the nature of form. It has this meaning as well. We call this Nyedo or Nishad. Nishad was, in general, he used to be quite naughty, a person with very heavy desire. He stood up, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and said respectfully to the Buddha, "I also saw the thus come one soon after he had become a Buddha. I learned to contemplate the attribute of impurity, and I developed a strong aversion to it. I came to understand that the nature of visible objects." Then his story begins. He relied on form among form, sound, smell, and taste, on visible forms to attain enlightenment. He also stood up from his cushion, bowed at the Buddha's feet. and after bowing, he respectfully addressed the Buddha, saying, "I actually also saw the Buddha soon after he had become a Buddha, because not long after his enlightenment, he also had the opportunity to see the Buddha. Then I contemplated the attribute of impurity. At that time it seems his desire was quite strong, so the Buddha asked him to contemplate impurity. While contemplating impurity, he eventually developed a profound sense of aversion toward the entire human body. After developing this profound aversion, he began to awaken to and realize the true nature of form. He completely understood the principle of the emptiness of form. I believe it was Master Oyi who taught this. Impurity is divided into 5 aspects. The first is the impurity of the place of birth. The place of birth refers to the mother's womb and such. Because when you dwell in the womb, the place of birth is certainly not very clean. The second is the impurity of the seed. The impurity of the seed refers to, for example, the father's semen and mother's blood. The seeds of this entire physical body have nothing clean about them either. The third is the impurity of characteristics. Characteristics refer to appearances. It means that from head to toe, there is no clean part of a human being. If you dissect the human body, you won't find anything clean anywhere. The fourth is the impurity of nature. Its inherent nature is impure. This refers to the 36 impure substances we often talk about. And the final one is ultimate impurity. Ultimate impurity means that ultimately, after a person dies, this corpse, the human corpse, has nothing clean about it. So by contemplating these 5 aspects of impurity in meditation, he finally realized the true nature of form. Generally, we human beings, probably the hardest thing for us to resist is looking at beautiful forms. This is something many ordinary beings find difficult to control and hard to resist. But if you investigate with wisdom this form which is the object of our attachment, exactly where does it have any clean part? When you observe in this way, eventually you will realize that the essence of form is emptiness. Just like in the 8th chapter of our Bodhicaryavatara, the chapter on meditative concentration, it also analyzes the impurity of the human body. In the precious garland of the middle way, it is also explained very extensively. In Nagarjuna's precious garland of the middle way, it is discussed very, very extensively. Also in other related sutras and shastras, including our Madhyamakavatara, there is also a small portion of this content. In this way he finally awakened to this. In the end, he fully understood it all. So how did he realize it? He described the process. Whitened bones turn to dust, disperse into space and vanish. I understood that neither space nor visible objects truly exist, and thus I needed no further instruction. In this process, when he meditated on impurity, first he imagined the entire human body, for example, visualizing it rotting, turning blue, and smelling foul. He practiced the meditation on impurity through various visualizations, like in Thailand and Myanmar. Many today they first practice the meditation on impurity. Then they begin to visualize white bones, finally visualizing this body completely decomposed. After decomposing, only a skeleton remains. Then when this skeleton is further analyzed in detail, finally down to dust, the skeleton is also found to lack any inherent existence. Ultimately, it returns to space. There is nothing there. At that moment, form and emptiness are non-dual. The beautiful forms we see now, actually, their essence is impure to begin with. Its true nature is like this. Then it is white bones, then it is dust, and after dust it is space. Emptiness and appearance are indivisible. From this truth he attained the path of no more learning. That was his case. Originally he was the naughtiest, but later, after meditating on impurity and selflessness, he did indeed attain the path of no more learning. The thus come one verified my understanding and gave me the name Nishad, Upaniṣad. There is Upa in front of it. Now here, Upa might be his surname or something, Upaniṣad. Visible objects as I had perceived them no longer existed, but their wondrousness which had been hidden was everywhere revealed to me. So it was that I became an arhat by contemplating visible objects. Then he said, "After I attained the path of no more learning, the thus come one also verified my understanding." Later, what name did he give me? The emptiness of the nature of form. Because he attained enlightenment through visible forms, he was called the emptiness of the nature of form. We often say Gurdo, and Gurdo should mean, "It seems I haven't seen anything" in Tibetan that means the emptiness of the nature of form. But actually he represents the emptiness of the nature of form. When we put the names of those great masters into a dictionary, it should be fine. Some names are quite hard to find. At this point, the external forms, the objects of form, because everything we see, all objects of the eye, whether white, red or blue, triangular or oval, everything with shape and color is an object of form. But in the end, all these objects of form have been purified. Once the objects of form are purified, actually, what is perfected or manifested, wondrous form secretly perfect, wondrous form the original face of form, it should be said to be this wondrous, bright, seeing essence. It is hidden, perfect, pervasive or pure, luminous and so on. Therefore, as I look at the realization of each arhat here, it is actually quite high. They shouldn't just be limited to the selflessness of persons. So just as some great masters have acknowledged, this is the most ultimate Dharma method. In this case, then actually, although he appears to be an arhat on the surface, he is only manifesting the appearance of an arhat. What he has realized must be the highest bodhi. So at that time, what did the emptiness of the nature of form realize? I attained the fruit of arhatship through contemplating visible forms. The Buddha has asked us how we broke through to enlightenment. I believe that the contemplation of visible objects is the best method. If the Buddha asks us for the perfect method to attain Buddhahood, because in terms of organs there are only 6 organs, what is the best cause for attaining Buddhahood? If the Buddha asks us what the cause of Bodhi is, if he asks what the cause of Bodhi is, I don't know about others, but for me, based on my personal experience and my personal realization, this object of form is the best. The cause of form is supreme. The object of form is the best cause for attaining Buddhahood. Indeed, as everyone might know, sentient beings have vastly different capacities. Why did the Buddha teach us the 84,000 Dharma doors? For the exact same teaching, right there on the spot. Some people attain enlightenment by relying on the object of form, some by relying on the object of sound, and some by relying on the objects of smell, taste, touch, mental objects, and so on. This is how they awaken. Therefore, if we make a sweeping generalization saying, "Because I like it this way, you must do it this way too," that is very, very difficult. Within the mental continuum of each sentient being, their inclinations and capacities are different. What resonates with one person might not resonate with another. Like a dish we cook ourselves, we might think, "Wow, this looks absolutely amazing, come and eat." Then one person says, "It's all right," another says it tastes terrible, and another says it's quite good. So if there are 3 people, this one dish might bring 3 different feelings, happiness, suffering, or a neutral feeling. They are all different, hence it's hard to please everyone. Indeed, sometimes when we teach a dharma or say something, it's also very difficult to make everyone happy. Including some secular leaders when they speak, sometimes they really want to make everything perfect. But perfection is also very hard to achieve. Look at the British Prime Minister the other day, Truss or Tesla. I always mix them up. Truss, right? When she became Prime Minister, she was so elated, wow, so incredibly happy. But now, in just over 40 days, yesterday she had to announce her resignation. The old man before her also had to resign. Someone told a joke, his son is only 4 months old, but he has already seen 2 prime ministers and 2 monarchs. The Queen passed away as well, and then Charles came up, and there were several chancellors of the exchequer, because during this process, perhaps the situation over there right now is indeed very turbulent. People just keep demanding we need higher wages and so on. But truthfully, being a leader is also very, very difficult. Yesterday when she announced it, I also felt a bit What to do. So, sentient beings have different capacities. In the future, especially when you become managers of volunteer work, at first your intention is very good. I must do a perfect job and manage this department really well. But after encountering a few issues, this person is unhappy, that person is unhappy, superiors are unhappy, subordinates are unhappy. In the end, all you can say is, I'm announcing my resignation, so I suppose after all these years I must still be quite capable, otherwise I wouldn't know how to handle it now. It's not that I'm capable, perhaps it's due to other karmic conditions. So sometimes we truly find that satisfying everyone is extremely difficult. Looking at this situation, whether it's a situation, actually it's the same for the masters propagating the Dharma. In the future, many Dharma friends here will certainly have the karmic connection to propagate the Dharma and benefit sentient beings, but this connection also mainly relies on yourselves. One thing is that a person must be strong and also have skillful means, especially your emotional intelligence needs to be a bit higher. Your IQ doesn't necessarily have to be very high. If your IQ is too high, this world today might not be able to accommodate you, so sometimes it might require conditions from various aspects. Looking from the sidelines is easy enough. The bystander is clear, but the person involved is confused, so it's easy for a bystander to talk. But when you actually do it yourself, even with just a tiny little task, you might not do it very well. Therefore the capacities of sentient beings are indeed, some awaken through the object of form, some suffer through the object of form, some awaken through the object of sound, and some suffer through the object of sound. Next is the third one, awakening through the object of smell. This is called the virgin youth, sublimity of fragrance. In Tibetan they say bodhisattva. Indeed, in some sutras he is called bodhisattva, sublimity of fragrance. There are such cases, but here, in terms of his manifestation, is he an arhat? The later explanation is, so sometimes the virgin youth sublimity of fragrance, there is also a bodhisattva named the virgin youth sublimity of fragrance. The term youth here is not like when we talk about the youth Manjushri. He renounced the world and realized the truth when he was quite young. But the person might not necessarily be very young. There might be such different interpretations. The virgin youth sublimity of fragrance then stood up, bowed at the Buddha's feet and said to him respectfully, I heard the Thus Come One teach me to contemplate attentively all attributes subject to conditions. Here it also says, the virgin youth sublimity of fragrance, whether an arhat or a bodhisattva. He also stood up from his cushion, bowed down to the Buddha's feet, and addressed the Buddha respectfully, saying, I also heard the Thus Come One teach me to carefully observe the attributes of all conditioned phenomena. At that time he was observing the attributes of conditioned phenomena. Those attributes here, the attributes of conditioned phenomena. I then took my leave of the Buddha and retreated to a pure and peaceful dwelling. I observed that when monks lit sandalwood incense, after the Buddha gave him this instruction, he immediately took his leave or bowed to the Buddha and went by himself to here it says retreated to a pure and peaceful dwelling. This means it was actually a very pure place where he practiced. There was no clamor, no disturbance of any kind. The meaning is to conceal one's brilliance and retreat into obscurity. It was extremely quiet here. There was no flow of other people coming and going, and it was exceptionally pure. While practicing in such a place, he saw other monks beginning to burn sandalwood incense. As for sandalwood incense, it is said that this incense is a bit different from others, the so-called sinking in water incense, agarwood. First the fragrant wood is placed on the ground, and then slowly its exterior. When the outer shell rots a little, the inner part continues to be soaked in water. Then after a very long time, it turns into this incense. This incense is a bit different from other incenses. It doesn't produce smoke, there's no thick, billowing smoke, and its fragrance spreads in all 10 directions. It's incredibly fragrant, a very rich, sweet scent. It's a very excellent incense. So at that time the monks began to burn this kind of incense. Nowadays we also burn this incense and that incense. Some incenses smell very good, but some incenses really, I don't know what they are. The other day there was a Khenpo. They put his name on it. He was a bit unhappy. I don't know why the incense you make stinks so much. It smells just like burning rags. He was telling them, on this incense of yours don't write my name, but you wouldn't listen, and you wrote my name, but it's useless even if you write my name. I tried your incense, and it smells just like burning rags. So this kind of fragrance, with this kind, you probably wouldn't attain enlightenment, you might even develop feelings of disgust. If it were a truly excellent incense like that, then its fragrance silently entered my nostrils. This fragrance was exceptionally pure and silent. It didn't strongly irritate his olfactory organ, nor did it heavily sting the eyes. None of that. It was exceptionally pure. Then it purely entered his nose. At this point in my contemplation I realized that the source of the fragrance was neither wood, nor space, nor smoke, nor fire. It came from no place and went to no place. As a result of this contemplation, my distinction-making consciousness disappeared, and I gained freedom from outflows. What was the situation for the virgin youth's sublimity of fragrance then? It's quite simple. When the fragrance from someone burning incense nearby wafted over, sometimes we also burn a little incense here. It would be better if we had some incense today. Today we have nothing. If we had lit some incense in front, we could see if we might attain enlightenment. Now it seems, these past few years, our prayer flags are gone, the butter lamps are gone, the incense is gone, all the commonly used items in Buddhism, the lamps are all gone. Then prayer flags are completely forbidden, and incense too. Well, it wasn't strictly forbidden, but maybe out of fear of fire it's gone too. Now whenever there's something it's a fire hazard, so sometimes it's like, I don't know why society has changed to be like this. Perhaps it's a sign of the Dharma ending age. So when I don't have butter lamps to offer, sometimes I'm a bit unused to it, but there's no other way, I just have to go along with everyone. Maybe the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are also a bit unused to it, and burning smoke offerings is also not allowed. At that time, when he contemplated this fragrance, when he investigated this fragrance, he saw it wasn't the wood burning the incense, because the wood wasn't right there, it was over to the side. Nor was it space. If it were space, space is always there, but there isn't always fragrance in space. Nor was it smoke. If it were smoke, thick billowing smoke would be visible. But there was none of that, because its characteristic was that it produced no thick smoke, nor was it fire. If it were fire, if fire entered the nostrils, it would certainly burn. It wasn't that. So starting from the essence of the fragrance, as some commentaries explain, this is refuting arising from the four extremes. It refutes it from four aspects. Added to this is that it has no coming and no going. It went to no place. If this fragrance were to go somewhere, does it have a destination? No destination can be found. Just now the fragrance came, and then where did it go? Did it go to the east, to the west? It cannot be found. Then it came from no place. Its origin cannot be found either. The true contributing condition just now might have been at the place where the incense was lit. But if you look for it here, its source also cannot be found. If the external object of fragrance cannot be found, as a result, my distinction-making consciousness disappeared, and I gained freedom from outflows. So at this time, when you analyze and investigate your own apprehending consciousness, the subject that grasps at it also naturally vanishes. After this, what is finally revealed? Outflow-free wisdom. At that time he relied on this, on burning a stick of incense, to begin his awakening. The thus come one verified my understanding and gave me the name Sublimity of Fragrance. At this point the thus come one verified him and gave him the name Sublimity of Fragrance. Didn't we mention this earlier? The virgin youth Sublimity of Fragrance. This was the title the Buddha gave him. Fragrance as I had perceived it vanished, but its wondrousness which had been hidden was everywhere revealed to me. So it was that I became an arhat, through contemplating the sublimity within fragrance. So at that time when this fragrance suddenly vanished, actually he had fully realized the perfect and wondrous essence of fragrance, the truly pure and secret nature of the Tathagata Garbha, the nature that pervades everywhere, the true original face of the Tathagata Garbha. He had understood it, it had manifested, therefore I relied on this fragrance to attain the fruit of arhatship. The Buddha has asked us how we broke through to enlightenment. I believe that rectifying the mind by means of fragrance is the best method. If the Buddha asks me what the cause for perfect penetration, for attaining Bodhi is, according to my realization, for me the object of smell is the supreme one, sublimity of fragrance, because none of the others worked. It seems for us none of them work. Sometimes it's a bit, we have seen, we have heard, we have smelled, we have tasted, we have touched, we have thought about them, but it seems with everything, just when we start listening to the teachings, it feels like we have a little bit of feeling, but after a while it's like a fleeting illness that gets better, and then it's gone again. So I don't know what to do. So you see, if it doesn't work, wait a while, go down and light some incense yourself, and see if you can, just like our virgin youth sublimity of fragrance. See if you get some kind of, really his method of contemplation was like this. But they relied on this method and truly attained enlightenment. No matter what we do, but we should still be able to understand the principle. From the principle we should be able to understand it. It should be possible to awaken through this method. We can also put effort into this area. Then the fourth one should be attaining enlightenment by relying on the object of taste. This is the King of Healing and the Master of Healing, the two princes in the Dharma, King of Healing and Master of Healing. Two princes in the Dharma then stood up in the assembly together with 500 gods from the heavens of Brahma. They bowed at the Buddha's feet and said respectfully to the Buddha, "For countless eons we have served the world as skillful physicians. We have tasted 108,000 kinds of medicinal substances, herbs, woods, metals, and minerals that are to be found in the Saha world. Here below are the King of Healing and the Master of Healing." We introduced them last year when we studied the Sutra of Great Liberation. They made their vows during the time of other Buddhas. There is also a dedicated Buddhist sutra about this, the Sutra on the Contemplation of the Two Bodhisattvas, King of Healing and Master of Healing. There is a specific sutra for it. We also gave a brief introduction to this before, so I won't repeat it here. Actually, they are two brothers. They once made this vow, lifetime after lifetime, relying on medicine as physicians. They would cure the mental and physical illnesses of sentient beings, benefiting them. This was their vow. They are two truly remarkable bodhisattvas. They are also very famous in Han Buddhism. So these two were also present on the spot. At Shakyamuni Buddha's Shurangama Dharma assembly, the two of them began to tell their story. And at the Shurangama assembly, 500 Brahma gods stood up together with them. They had quite a large retinue, so when their masters stood up, these gods who came with them stood up too. They probably also often went up to the heavens. They were quite famous physicians in the Brahma heavens as well. Then they bowed at the Buddha's feet and said to the Buddha, "For countless eons we too," they had vowed to be excellent physicians lifetime after lifetime, really excellent ones, for both body and mind. For some of us, what does it mean to be an excellent physician? First, you understand the symptoms, then you know the cause of the disease, then you eradicate the disease. And finally, if the disease never relapses, that is a true excellent physician. This is also what is taught in some sutras and shastras. If you don't understand the symptoms, don't understand the cause, and your prescribed medicine is not on point, you probably can't be called an excellent physician. just a self-proclaimed doctor. Since beginningless time, the two of us have been excellent physicians. And during this process, in their mouths, with their mouths, they have tasted all these medicinal substances in the Saha world. Generally, this was also the case with traditional Chinese medicine in the past. It was the same for Tibetan medicine in the past. Back then, there probably weren't many machines for testing. Even Li Shijian's Compendium of Materia Medica, when they first discovered many medicines, they also did these experiments in the mountains. They chewed, ate, and smelled them themselves. There were many such instances. This was basically the fundamental method for both Tibetan and Chinese medicine. Actually, it seems Tibetan medicine practitioners are becoming fewer and fewer now. They say that on our mountains, the herbal medicines from the past that could be used as medicine, I don't know why, for some the root is the medicine. For some the stem, for some the flower, for some the fruit. Some are picked in spring, some in winter, some dug up in summer, all different kinds. There are also many differences regarding the seasons. But nowadays I don't know if the merit of sentient beings is continually decreasing. I've met many Tibetan doctors, and they all say that Tibetan medicines are extremely hard to gather now. Gathering herbs is very troublesome. The herbs that were on a certain mountain last year don't grow there this year. It's like this in many places. So as a physician, one frequently tastes these medicines. In this way, they said, whether it is the herbs, woods, metals, or minerals of the Saha world, all these medicinal substances that have names numbering 108,000 in total, this should just be a figurative number, meaning a great many. They have tasted all these medicinal herbs, and in the process of tasting them, we know how each of them tastes, whether bitter, sour, salty, bland, sweet, or hot. And we know their inherent characteristics, the various ways they may be combined, and the changes that they effect. Then, when they were tasting these medicines, basically some are bitter, some are salty, some are sour or astringent, some are salty, some are bland, sweet, sour, or hot. We often talk about sour, sweet, bitter, and spicy. All of these flavors they have already tasted. After tasting them, they knew which medicines are made by combining various ingredients. For example, these few medicines are all formulated together to treat an illness. These 3 or 4 medicines, or sometimes even over 20 kinds of medicines, must all be formulated together before they can cure an illness. Some are inherent. Inherent means you just take this single medicine by itself and use it to treat a certain illness without needing to mix it with other medicines. This is what is called inherent. Some undergo changes. As for changes, for instance, after several medicines are mixed together, they are boiled, roasted, baked, or soaked in water. Because each medicine's properties and its functions are different, some need to be altered or undergo changes through such processing. Then regarding the inherent nature of the medicine, it says, whether they are cooling or warming, toxic or benign, we understand them all. Moreover, some are cooling medicines which can cure heat-related illnesses. Some are warming medicines which cure cold-related illnesses. There are also toxic medicines and non-toxic medicines. Being toxic isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? Fighting poison with poison. As a medicine, some toxic substances can also be made into medicine. Some are non-toxic and they are also made into medicine. They understood this through such methods. Then how did they attain enlightenment? While reverently serving the Buddha, we came to understand that the nature of flavors is that they are neither empty nor existent. We understood that flavors do not arise from the body, nor from the mind, nor are they independent of the body and mind. Thus, by discerning the differences among flavors, we became enlightened. The two of them, perhaps the two brothers, attained enlightenment together. In the process of reverently serving the Thus Come One, while gathering and examining the medicines, they understood the nature of flavors, understood the medicine's different tastes that we just mentioned, sour, sweet, bitter, and spicy. All these different flavors. At this time, what did they discover? When they observed, what did they discover? Neither empty nor existent. The sense of taste just mentioned, this sense of taste is not empty either. If it were empty, it would be impossible to taste, nor is it truly existent. If it were truly existent, if it had substantial existence, you wouldn't be able to experience it through tasting. And these sensations of taste are not the body and mind. If they were the body and mind, that wouldn't make sense. You wouldn't need medicine, because if the body and mind were both medicinal flavors, medicine wouldn't be needed. Nor are they independent of the body and mind. If they were independent of the body and mind, there would be no way to taste the medicine. So this also involves the four extremes, neither empty nor existent, not arising from the body and mind, nor independent of the body and mind. Observing through these four extremes, by using the four extremes to discern and observe the causes of the medicines, ultimately it is ungraspable and inconceivable. They fully realize this state. So for us they did it while gathering medicine. Although we don't gather medicine, we eat sour, spicy and bitter foods every day. Especially the young people nowadays, they eat all sorts of things. But I haven't heard that many of them have attained enlightenment, because these flavors might be even more stimulating than medicine. Extremely sour, extremely spicy, extremely bitter. Especially the sensations on the tongues of young people today are totally different from before. For us it seems if we just add a little bit, if there's too much salt it's no good. If there's too much chili it doesn't taste good either. But for them sometimes you see those young people walking and saying, "Wow, so spicy" on the street. We should be like this. When will I attain enlightenment while eating? They reach the object of taste directly through the tongue organ. The object of taste, form, sound, smell, taste. Just now it was the object of smell, now it is attaining enlightenment through the object of taste. The Buddha, the thus come one, verified our understanding, and he named us two brothers, the Bodhisattva King of Healing and the Bodhisattva Master of Healing. At that time they were verified by the thus come one. Here Kunji means two brothers. Kun is elder brother, Ji is younger brother. Brothers, the two brothers, King of Healing and Master of Healing. The Buddha verified them as two bodhisattvas. Now in this assembly we are princes in the Dharma. Now in this grand assembly we are still princes in the Dharma, bodhisattvas. So it was that through flavors we realized enlightenment and understood, and we ascended to the bodhisattva level. What happened to the two of us? Because we manifested the true nature of flavor. That is to say, after understanding the true nature of flavor, the luminous nature of awareness finally manifested. After it manifested, it pervaded the entire Dharma Dhatu. They reached such a state. Afterward they attained I don't know which bodhisattva bhumi, but they certainly became bodhisattvas who had attained the bhumis, ascended to the bodhisattva level. The Buddha has asked us how we broke through to enlightenment. We believe the contemplation of flavors to be the best method. If the Buddha asks me about the cause for attaining Buddhahood, or what the cause of Bodhi is, then for me, according to my own realization, among all methods, the object of taste is the best. Because I attained enlightenment through the object of taste at that time. So look at this object of taste. Actually, it's just that we cannot attain enlightenment, otherwise these objects are all present everywhere. Why is it that during the empowerment of the four heart drops, just like earlier with sounds, pleasant and unpleasant ones, like the cha-cha-cha sound nearby, and the sound of a bell and drum, there are pleasant ones, and there are also unpleasant ones. Then regarding form, there are beautiful forms and ugly forms, beautiful flowers and ugly rough things like the body of a frog. During our empowerments, what is the beautiful thing and what is the ugly thing? What was it to look at? No, at that time there was something beautiful. What was it? There should be two things, one beautiful and one ugly. Then for taste, delicious things and unpalatable things, sour ones and sweet ones, these two. Then for smell, burning something that emits a very foul smell, and there is also very fragrant incense. The main question is, what was the object to look at? Let alone attaining enlightenment, whatever the object is, what was it? Look at what? There definitely should be a representation for the object of form. a representation of form, wondrous form and ugly form. I can't recall it right now, but for him it is this: the object of taste is the supreme method. When you eat breakfast in the morning, whether eating a bit sweeter, a bit spicier, or a bit saltier, see if there is any possibility of attaining enlightenment. Next here is someone named Bhadrapāla. Bhadrapāla means virtuous protector, perfectly protecting, or virtuous guardian. Some translate it as virtuous guardian. It means skilled at protecting, Rang Chung. This name is similar to the one mentioned in the Sutra of the Buddha's last teaching, the last person the Buddha liberated. It's somewhat similar to that person's name, but it just seems the name is the same, it's not the same person. In Tibetan the names are exactly identical, but it seems the person here is not the same, although he is also called Bhadrapāla, or was it Subhadra, they don't seem to be the same person. So he, Bhadrapāla, and his 16 bodhisattva companions stood up in the assembly and bowed at the Buddha's feet. Bhadrapāla said respectfully to the Buddha, "In the past, when we heard the Buddha's awe-inspiring royal voice speak about the Dharma, we followed him into the monastic life." Here it mentions this virtuous protector from earlier. He said he and his 16 bodhisattvas. Here Kaishi is sometimes translated as bodhisattva and sometimes as mahasattva. But for mahasattva we can also use bodhisattva, right? For example, mahasattva avalokiteshvara, mahasattva mahastamaprapta. So this mahasattva, together with them, his retinue wasn't like the previous one. Earlier 500 people stood up together to bow. This time there were only 16. Then they stood up from their seats together, bowed down at the Buddha's feet, and addressed the Buddha, saying this: "In the past, before the Thus Come One, awe-inspiring royal voice, we also heard the true Dharma. This was a time away from now. It seems like a huge number, 20,000 kotis of Buddhas ago. Previously, when we were teaching the Lotus Sutra, this was mentioned. We entered the monastic life there at that time." He said, "I previously became a monastic before that Buddha." For virtuous protector, he probably didn't attain enlightenment before Shakyamuni Buddha. It should have been before the Thus Come One, our inspiring royal voice. It should be like this: when it was time to bathe, I followed the custom and entered the bathhouse. Suddenly, upon contact with the water, I understood that the water was neither washing away the dirt nor washing my body. In the midst of this I became tranquil as I understood that there was nothing there. He then talked about his enlightenment story. He said at that time the monastic community had specific times for bathing. During this bathing time, when it was his turn, he followed the bathing custom seemingly every 15 days. There was a bath once every 15 days according to the monastic rules of the time. At that time he entered the bathhouse. Here we also have bathhouses for monks and nuns. Let's see if you can attain enlightenment when you go to the bathhouse tomorrow. Then, after entering the bathhouse, he suddenly attained realization. Due to the condition of the water, he suddenly awakened. What kind of awakening was it? When he investigated at that time, because here it's about the sensation of touch, bodily contact. So while he was bathing at that moment, as he was investigating his own mind's nature, neither washing away the dirt, nor washing my body, when he was bathing, actually, the true sensation of touch, true tactile awareness, what exactly is this touch like? In reality, it's not washing away the dirt either, because there was dirt on his body. But the dirt on his body isn't it either. The dirt on the body that you want to wash away is also not this sensation of touch. Nor is it washing this body. It's not the body either. Actually, we have dirt on our bodies, and we wash it off with water, right? During the washing process, there is water, there is dirt, and there is the body, these three phenomena. But in fact, as for the true sensation of touch, actually it's not the water, nor is it the body, nor is it the dirt. None of these three fit. Then, is there anything in between, apart from these three? In between there is also nothing to be found. Here the main point is he wants to find out what exactly his tactile sensation is. Where exactly is the mind? For example, when I'm bathing, I think, so comfortable. If you think like this, actually, this mind of yours that feels very comfortable, does it arise from washing the dirt, or from washing the body, or from the water, or is it some phenomenon in between, apart from these? He investigated like this. As he was investigating, I have never forgotten that event from that lifetime until this one, and now I have followed the Buddha Shakyamuni into the monastic life and need no further instruction. He must be. The sequence of events here is slightly different from the others, because it was due to karmic connections from a very, very long time ago. He was also explaining, in fact he said, because his past habituations were never forgotten, because he never forgot them. Today he also became a monastic under the Buddha, and attained the fruit of no more learning. The Buddha has named me Bhadrapāla. So here, that Buddha should refer to the aforementioned thus come one awe-inspiring royal voice. During the time of the thus come one awe-inspiring royal voice, he had presumably already attained the fruit of no more learning by then. But in fact, previously as well, when he was bathing like this, he attained the fruit of no more learning. Because of this, actually that Buddha, the thus come one awe-inspiring royal voice, verified me and named me Bhadrapāla, which is virtuous protector, as mentioned earlier. Why is he called virtuous protector? Actually, it's because he upheld pure precepts for a very long time. There is a story about the Bodhisattva never disparaging. Bodhisattva never disparaging was a bodhisattva during the time of the thus come one awe-inspiring royal voice. The Buddha was Bodhisattva never disparaging at that time, and Bhadrapāla was also there during that time. At that time, because he slandered Bodhisattva never disparaging, he frequently bullied him. Because of frequently bullying him, he later fell into hell for many, many eons. Later, when he was reborn, he was once again before this Buddha. Bodhisattva never disparaging had already lived for tens of thousands of years. Later, after he had suffered in hell for a very long time, he subsequently also took refuge in Bodhisattva never disparaging, and repented before him. Later, it was also before that thus come one that he attained his fruit. This seems to have different versions in various commentaries. When our great master Shakyamuni Buddha was Bodhisattva never disparaging in the past, this person bullied him, constantly slandered him, and frequently pelted him with cow dung and stones. Because of this, because he slandered and disparaged a bodhisattva, he fell into lower realms for a long time. But later, because his previous habituations were never forgotten, and again before Bodhisattva never disparaging, Bodhisattva never disparaging was still alive. At this time he again ordained, continued in disparaging. Because there were also very, very many thus come ones awe-inspiring royal voice. There were very many Buddhas with this same name, but later perhaps it was an earlier thus come one awe-inspiring royal voice, or perhaps a later one, it was before a thus come one with the same name, that he attained enlightenment in this way. Therefore, regarding his enlightenment, it shouldn't have been under our Shakyamuni Buddha. He attained enlightenment like this a very long time ago. But this time it was also this Bodhisattva who participated in this Shurangama Dharma assembly, and then he shared his past story. He said, "The wondrousness of tangible objects has been revealed to me, and I am now a child of the Buddha." Here, revealed means manifesting. It means he manifested this wondrous tactile sensation, that is to say, the original face of the Tathagata Garbha. He has also completely realized it, directly perceived it. For this reason, he abides in the position of a child of the Buddha, a bodhisattva. The Buddha has asked us how we broke through to enlightenment. Having considered what I have attained, I believe that the contemplation of tangible objects is the best method. If the Buddha asks me what the cause of Bodhi is, for me, based on my own cultivation and realization, the object of touch is the most supreme, because I relied on touch when bathing at that time and attained enlightenment through such investigation. Therefore, when we generally have empowerments for the object of touch, there is a rough object and a relatively smooth object, these two things. What is the representation for wondrous form? Right now I still can't recall it. You all can look into this further. All right, we will stop here for today. We have told the stories of 5 enlightened sages.
Bandara Banma Sadar